So I created a sample essay that uses that TERQL model to try and show students how to apply that model to the content of Night. So that is also in the links. I've just clicked on it. There we go, TERQL structuring your essay. So there's our essay topic. So in your introduction, you need to address the essay topic, you need to introduce some subtopics, and you need to comment on the overall impact of the memoir. So let's have a look at what I've done here. So my first sentence of the introduction addresses the essay topic directly. Elie Wiesel's memoir Night provides the reader with insights into the brutalizing conditions experienced by Jewish victims of the Holocaust and how these conditions affected the people's behaviour. What I've done there is I've used key words from the essay topic and included them in that very first sentence. What I've also done is mentioned the name of the author, identified what type of text it is, memoir, and mentioned the text name, Night. So that is the first sentence here, addressing the essay topic. That's what I've done. The next 3 or 4 sentences will introduce the subtopics. So pretty much one sentence for each subtopic that you have in your essay. So while many of the victims showed each other kindness and compassion towards one another, that's my subtopic number 1, Wiesel's account demonstrates that in most cases, people will behave inhumanely when faced with brutalising conditions. So I'm kind of linking it a little bit to the next sentence. The conditions of the concentration and extermination camps often led prisoners to treat one another with cruelty as their desire to survive overtook their empathy and compassion. So that's my second subtopic. And my third subtopic is in the next sentence. The brutalising conditions of the death marches also led to the inhumane actions of the prisoners toward one another and shows that even blood ties cannot withstand brutalising conditions. So there's my 3 subtopics. My first subtopic is the prisoners showed one another kindness and compassion. My second subtopic is the conditions of the camps led prisoners to treat one another with cruelty. And my third subtopic is the conditions of the death marches led to inhumane behaviour. Then I finish with a comment on the overall impact of the memoir for my final sentence. So here's my comment. Wiesel's account of the atrocities of the Holocaust show how human behaviour can easily descend into inhumanity when the conditions are brutal, but that humans have the potential to show one another compassion and kindness despite these conditions. So that's a really general sort of statement that links the ideas of the memoir with the wider world. So that's your introduction done. Now just be aware too that you don't need to start with your introduction when you're drafting up your essay. Often people will launch straight into their paragraphs and complete their introduction at the end of the essay. Paragraph 1, subtopic 1, you need to use the TERQL model, or you can use the TERQL model. So you need a topic sentence, then you need to explain the topic sentence, you need to do a reference to the text and a quotation, another reference to the text and a quotation, and a link back to the topic sentence. So here's my example in paragraph 1. So if you recall, my first subtopic was many victims showed each other kindness and compassion towards one another. So that is what my first paragraph is about. Knight shows that many of the victims of the Holocaust showed each other kindness and compassion despite the brutalising conditions. So now I need to talk a little bit more in detail about what that topic sentence means. To try and flesh it out a little bit, try and imagine that your reader of your essay hasn't read the book before, that you're explaining it a little bit in more detail. The victims of the Holocaust were faced with a range of brutalising conditions, from their transportation on cattle cars, their selection for extermination, their placement in concentration and extermination camps, and their participation in death marches. So I'm a lot more specific in that second sentence about what I mean by victims of the Holocaust and brutalizing conditions. Weasel experienced each of these brutal events and conditions and identifies a number of examples where people behaved humanely towards one another. So I'm kind of linking the text now to my examples. So here I now launch into my example and my quotation. So at the beginning of the memoir, and then I would talk about how at the beginning of the memoir, people were treating each other with kindness. I might choose an example where they were giving each other water and use a quotation to support that. Then I would use another example. Once they arrived at Auschwitz, Weasel recounts that, and then I might use an example such as the prisoners giving one another advice. Make sure that you tell them that you're 18. Make sure that you tell them that you're 40. Otherwise, you'll get selected. And then a quotation for that. So there's my two examples. And by all means, especially if you're aiming for an extended, you might try and do more than two examples. The final sentence of your paragraph, you would be linking back to that topic sentence. So the topic sentence was, Knight shows that many of the victims of the Holocaust showed each other kindness and compassion towards one another despite the brutalizing conditions. So that idea in that first sentence should be evident in that final sentence of the paragraph. Just like examples show that some people are able to retain their humanity and treat others selflessly and with empathy, even though they themselves were experiencing cruel and brutal behaviour. So it's almost like a mini summary, a mini conclusion based on that topic sentence. So paragraph 2, you do the same sort of thing, topic sentence, explain it, use a couple of references and quotations, and then a link back to your topic sentence. So if we scroll back up, my second subtopic for my intro was the conditions of the concentration and extermination camps often led people to treat one another with cruelty as their desire to survive overtook their empathy and compassion. So I focus on the concentration and extermination camps for my second paragraph. So my topic sentence is a rephrasing of my topic in the paragraph, or a rephrasing of what I said in the paragraph. Weasel's experiences as a prisoner during the Holocaust demonstrate that many of the prisoners in concentration and extermination camps treated one another with cruelty due to the brutalizing conditions in these environments. So you can see I've rephrased what I said in the introduction. Now I expand on that a little bit more, making some stronger connections to the text. While the prisoners showed humanity at the beginning of their experiences, Weasel shows that as the conditions worsened, their desire to survive overtook their empathy and compassion, and they lost their humanity. So that's a nice lead in to my examples, which are in the next sentence. On a number of occasions, Weasel portrays the inhumanity shown between starving prisoners when they were thrown scraps of food. And so you could talk about the example from the text where the prisoners were trampling one another for the crusts of bread, and use a quotation. Then my second example, when Weasel's father was suffering from dysentery, and that's towards the end of the text, where the other prisoners would bash him, even though he was desperately ill, and steal his food and his clothing. And again, use a quotation. Weasel's account of the Holocaust shows that when humans are deprived of basic human rights, such as food, clothing, and bedding, they may begin to act in an inhumane way towards one another. So that's my linking back to the topic sentence paragraph. So I'm making a clear connection between the first sentence of the paragraph and the last sentence of the paragraph. And I'm sort of just going a little bit further with that last sentence to make some sort of conclusion based on the evidence that I've provided.